Okay, so we are now recording. So what we just did was we just kind of went through and we did a little recap as to where we are right now. And we are on the step where we've completed we've summarized the data story. We looked at our initial inventory. And today we're going to start off by exploring and identifying gaps between the current reality. And so the current reality is reflected in the data. So that having that data summary open is going to be important here. And then what's our desired state? And so we're going to get into some groups and we're just going to spend about 7 minutes on this. And that'll give everybody a chance to kind of look at some of the information that we have so far and then start thinking about what's our desired state. If our current state is that we have higher than expected suicide ideation, we have many students that come in with high ACEs. We have students reporting that they do feel safe at school. We have certain initiatives put into place. That's kind of our current state. So what is our desired state? So I'm going to go ahead and put everybody into groups. And when I do, we will just want to um, make sure that you are documenting your the conversation that you have here, because we're going to just choose one of those groups and we're going to plug that in as our data that we're putting in for our sample data. So you guys don't need to go in order, just put your group number, or don't even put a group number, just as long as we know kind of where everybody is with it. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make some breakout rooms. And I'm going to shoot for about 4 to 5 participants for each room. And I'm going to make our breakout rooms for 7 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose. All right, so we're back recording. And the question was, at this point, are we looking at things from a district perspective? So yes. So, and I did see that question in the chat earlier. So basically, the one of the big switches or the differences for MICIP is that it's a district level plan is what you're working on. So when we're doing all this data discovery and data analysis and those sorts of things, we're trying to think about what are those high level district pieces that we want to really focus on. That doesn't mean that there might not be some data that is more relevant to elementary or more relevant to secondary or whatnot. But the time that we really get into schools, kind of getting a piece of that is going to be later in the process when we start making the strategy, when we start selecting strategies and activities about what to do about this data. And that's where we really start to dig into, okay, so what does this data in this, in this case, what does, student climate surveys, our TFI, what does that mean for our elementaries, and what does it mean for secondary? And that's where, when we start making strategies and activities and selecting those, that's where we start to really kind of break out. And school teams might have a little bit of a different role, but all of the stuff that we're doing right now is really a district level piece. And I've been working on some graphics to kind of try to explain that. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around a little bit, especially if you've been in the paradigm of, we have schools make school plans and those feed into and make a district plan. This is really looking at it completely backward from that, in that we're saying we have district level initiatives, we have district level problems of practice that we want to attack. Now, what are the school's pieces of accomplishing that? So I have a couple of different visualizations of that I'm working on that maybe we can take a look at coming up. So let's take a look and just kind of see what we had for our group conversations. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And so looking at this, and we're talking about some desired state, analyze. So a desired state might be analyze why the county and school surveys are showing different results at the middle school. Want to understand those emotional needs and improve the school climate for all. So this would kind of be that what we're talking about for the desires. Our desired state is that we can understand our students' social emotional needs and we want and improve the school climate for all. Okay. Students are experiencing a high number of ACEs. Can we gather more data on the understanding of staff around ACEs? We have a high rate of suicide attempts that's double the county average. We would hope to bring this down to at least the county average. So that would be another desired state, that our suicidal ideation and attempts were more in line with county average. Continue to see a high number of students feeling safe at school, see a reduction in suicidal ideation, have interventions in place to develop resilience. So those are a couple of pieces of desired state. Seriously contempt is higher than the county. Students indicated not feeling safe outside the school setting. Students recognize their parents need to make a stronger attempt to communicate. Why don't we go ahead and let's just pull room ones, just pulling one at random here. And this is what we're going to plug in. But I think the main thing that we're trying to get across with this whole identifying gaps piece is you kind of think about this in order. The first thing we did was we just kind of summarized what our data was. Then we got in and we did some inventory analysis. And I see that there was some we kind of continued that a little bit in this area. Then we're like, okay, so if this is what the data is telling us, if this is what's in place right now, then where do we want to be? So that's kind of that's what the little progression here has been so far. So this is really the where do we want to be? And so from this group, what I got was where we want to be is we want to be able to understand our students' social emotional needs, and we want to improve the school climate for all. So let's go ahead and I'm going to plug that in as our over here in MICIP. I'm going to go ahead and plug that in into the third section. And I'm going to highlight that or bold that in our document so that we remember that that's the one we did. So anybody working in the test site just needs to know that after you put all this stuff in the test site, it literally blows the test site away every night. So don't go in the test site and try to do this multi-day project where you're trying to put something together. It'll be gone by the next day. So that's another great reason in the meantime to be putting things in Google Docs. Yeah, I went in this morning and I rebuilt our project so far. So just keep that in mind if you're using the test site. All right, so now we get down to, this is the last section about data discovery. And that's where we would just go through and we would kind of summarize things. And it looked like we did a little bit of that summarizing in the desired state. But they do have some consideration questions here. So I have these copied into our document. So in our group templates, that I copied and pasted this over in there. So you don't need to have the MICIP open or whatever. But when really what they're trying to do is at the end, we're really trying to think about all of the conversations that we had so far around the data. So all the conversations that we had around the MiFi data or the school climate surveys, the inventory analysis that we did, the gap analysis, all that kind of stuff. We're trying to summarize it here. And they have some specific questions to address. It doesn't mean you need to take them and address every single one. They're just trying to really get to this last piece. Based on the data discovery, initiative inventory, and gap analysis, briefly describe the story your data is telling. So we're just really trying to say, what is this telling us? Why are we interested in it? And then in the next part, we'll start to get into why is the data the way that it is. So I'm going to have you guys go back into the groups, and I'm going to give 8 minutes this time because I want you guys to just take a minute to kind of look at and talk about these questions. And then just go ahead and write a quick story, data story summary. It just has to be a sentence or two long. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. But since we're just practicing, obviously you'd be spending more than 8 minutes or 7 or 8 minutes on each one of these with your teams. But I'm going to give you guys 8 minutes and would just really like for you to kind of dig into this here. So I'm going to go ahead and open those breakout rooms back up. And I'm going to change that to 8 minutes. And I'm going to make sure that I get Jeff assigned to a room. Welcome, Jeff. And Renee's here. Welcome, Renee. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get you guys open into your breakout rooms, reflect on those questions that are there, and then just write about a 2 or so sentence summary about all of our data so far. All right, welcome back, everybody. Um, so, geez, I bet you didn't know this is going to be so much fun today.
Adam's fault.
So, obviously, I mean, I know that the times are really short to go in on this, and I think that that's just, I think it's instructive to us to see how long this part of the process might really take. So, just this is not the sort of thing where you can say, you know, we're going to get together for an hour a month. I think you'd be in a little bit of trouble trying to crank through that. So that's something that maybe we can kind of talk about a little bit more in the future. But I think it's going to take a while to be able to dig through this stuff. It's the conversations can get really deep, and this portion of it really does set you up for the next part. And I think that as a lot of the conversations that I heard as I was popping around they were kind of jumping from saying, what is the data showing us? What's in place now? They naturally jump right to the next step, which is, what are we going to do about it? Or why is this the way that it is, right? So the next step is really trying to dig into the why portion of it. And I heard a lot of that when I was kind of going around in the different rooms. So I think once we work through the process, I think as people that will be leading this process with people, it will help us to say, oh, I hear you guys talking about why this might be in place. Right now, we're just trying to describe what's going on with the data and understand what our current state is. We're going to talk about the why in the next step, because you can start into this spiral of getting into all the different why things and that sort of thing, or what are we going to do about this? And I think for us to know what the goal is out of each of the steps is important, so that we don't kind of get off on tangents and that sort of thing. So based off of all of that, I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. I'll take a look into, just look right in the I keep saying MICIP. There's too much my stuff. Am I right? It's my everything. And I was just kind of reading over the different things that we had there. I think I'm going to grab, I think I'll grab room 5. So I'm going to grab room 5's, and I'm going to put that in as our district data story summary. So that says, according to the school climate survey results, the communication between school and parents needs to be strengthened. The current initiatives and programs in place need to be promoted for additional community and family support and acknowledgement. There could potentially be valuable partners in the process. Additional follow-up data is needed to dig deeper to determine additional reasons or gaps. So I didn't grab anything because I thought it was better than anything else, just grabbing it more to kind of continue. In fact, I think that this line of thinking is going to become really important as we get into the next step. This is starting to really think about the root cause of some of these pieces, and that's kind of the next step. So I went ahead and grabbed that, and we plugged it in. And at this point, this automatically saves as you go, so you don't have to keep hammering on the save button. So if I were to leave and come back, it would still be here. So you don't have to hit the save button. I think it's there just to help people feel a little safe, maybe. So I'm going to go ahead and we're done with the data discovery, and we're going to move on to analyze. All right, analyze. So we're just going to talk about this for maybe about 10 minutes, and then I want to leave some time for questions at the end. And Ashley, I think I saw that you put in the chat that you were kind of monitoring the questions that would help me figure out some things that I need to address at the end. So thanks for that. So once we're done with the data discovery, now we're in this analyze section. And right now, this gives us 2 options for how to analyze the data for the data story. They have 5 whys and they have Fishbone. There's also add your own. So you do not have to do one of these items. You could do something completely different. So if your district has a really great established process, maybe using Wellman and Lipton or something like that, you have a great way to analyze your district data, you do not have to use a Fishbone or a 5Y method to analyze the data. So I did want everybody to be kind of familiar with what Fishbones and 5Ys are. I think people maybe are more familiar with 5Ys than Fishbones. And in my experience, you would probably do a Fishbone and then you would do the 5 whys. So the Fishbone really starts with a problem of practice. In this case, it's us wanting to improve those social and wellness supports for the students. You identify different drivers on the Fishbone, and then you pick one of those drivers and you say, why is this the way that it is? So that would probably be what my suggestion is. So in our dashboard, I'm going to pull this over. I do have a couple of resources. I wanted to dig in a little bit about Fishbones, and we'll probably just end after talking about Fishbones a little bit. So I just kind of pulled something from something else that I've been working on, and I made something that you guys can use. It's in a Word document because there's a lot of like text boxes and things like that. So I just put it in I made it a PDF in a Word document. If you want to try to use it, you might want to download it and use it in Word. I'm not sure how great it would work in Google Docs. Maybe it would work great. I'm not sure. So with a Fishbone, what you do is you, in the head of the fish, you put your problem statement. So, our problem statement might be something along the lines of, we're worried about our students' social and emotional health. You could pull this from a different part of our work in MICIP, but you'd place your problem statement there. Then you have at the ends of this fish, so here each one of these is kind of one of the main bones. And at the end, you put what are the drivers of that. So you start to think about what are the things that are either in place or not in place that may be contributing to that problem. And then you start to think about details for that driver. And so I had kind of an example that I've been working through. So at one of the things that we're working on at our ISD is that we really want to be equitable about the services that we're providing to all of our constituents at the MAISD. And so I put in a problem of practice at the head. And then, so these are some of the drivers that I kind of thought of for that. So we have more relationship driven access to services. The district, we're not using a lot of district data for ISD decision making. So this is a little old. So hopefully the people at the ISD are saying, oh, but we're doing that now. So, some of our ISD services were kind of ill-defined. So you can kind of see that these were some of the main kind of drivers that I was thinking about for that problem. And then these were some of the specific details that went along with that. And I think what in MICIP, what we would want to do, if you wanted to use this process to really dig into root cause, is you would do the Fishbone first, and you would pick one of these bone areas, probably, whatever you thought the most important bone area was, to actually do the 5 why analysis on. So I know that this is, it feels weird without having a real example. So I kind of just wanted to show this example. Also in the system, you can't complete the Fishbone in MICIP. All you can do is upload a Fishbone. So you can't actually, there's not a tool that has a Fishbone in there. So I did include a blank Fishbone in these resources, both in this PDF and then also the Word. So you can kind of fill it out in a Word, or you can do it by hand. So this, I think, is really going to be where we pick up next time. And we spend some time trying to mess around with Fishbone diagrams and 5 whys, and hopefully we'll be able to get through that in the next session. But it's an interesting process, and it really does help to really get at that root cause, because it's pretty easy to say, you know what, it's the, the reason that is because of blank. Well, it's because we didn't do this PD, or we don't have this resource. And so we throw those sorts of things out all the time. And what this helps you do is it helps you to really think about what were the drivers behind this and what are those specific details. And then you get in and do the 5 why analysis afterward, and that really helps you kind of get down to what really is the root cause. And what you're trying to get at is what's the main root cause of this whole thing, so that we can address that root cause. And hopefully by putting that amount of thought into it, it stops you from like solutionitis, where it's like, oh, it's because we didn't get PD, so let's get PD. Oh, it's because we have a bad resource, let's buy a new resource. So it's trying to get away from those sorts of things that we typically do and get us to think a little bit more deeply. So what does that look like here in the system? So first, what I would do is I would go to the Fishbone first. And again, like I said, there's not a tool that you can actually put in here. There's something that you would actually type in. They're just showing you what a fishbone diagram looks like. So you would select that, you'd hit analyze root cause. And in this case, all you can do is upload that. The 5 whys is a little bit different. When you're ready to do the 5 whys, you select this, it just tells you what it is. You go to analyze root cause, and this is what we're actually gonna work through next time. Oh yeah, server error. Yeah, just server error all over the place. Let's hit refresh and see what happens. Oh, they restored our previous work. That was thoughtful. So that's kind of nice. It doesn't, if there is an error or whatever, it doesn't wreck it. So when I hit refresh, it actually took us into the 5 whys. So what you would do is you would put in your first why, and then you add a why. So when you're done, you end up with probably 5 of the whys, because it's called 5 whys. And then you finish the analysis, and that kind of plugs it in. But I'm not trying to get ahead of myself here. I'm just kind of trying to give an introduction to this is what we're going to work on next time.
So, David, what I'm hearing you saying is that the fishbone is more general than the 5 whys.
That other people might think differently if they've done this kind of work before. The way that when I've used these for some different pieces, so I had to, in some grad classes that I'm in right now, we actually did some pretty extensive work around both of these tools. And it's the way that I learned to use it is you do the fishbone first, and then you pick one of those main bone drivers, and then you plug that into the 5 whys. That flow is not set up that way in MICIP. They're saying pick one of these and do your analysis. If it were me, what I would do is I would go through and I would do the fishbone diagram. Then I would upload that fishbone diagram. This is where I was talking about it being nonlinear. I would actually take that, and we'll do this next time. I would take that fishbone diagram, I'd upload it into my data discovery, and see, now that we've done that, does that change our mind about anything that we've put so far? Then I would jump into the 5 whys. So just from, like I said, some of the training experience that I've had on that, and then just kind of playing around in MICIP here for the last year, that's probably the direction that I would go with that. And and that's what I'm going to have us practice when we get back together next time.
Thank you for answering that. We did the CPI in our district using the fishbone.
Okay.
Then we did the 5 whys, and some people were very skeptical about the 5 whys, that these were subjective answers to the whys, even when we get to the end of whys. But anyway, this is a good discussion. I think people need to hear those discoveries.
And I would not necessarily disagree with the way that your team was feeling. So when you get into a lot of this stuff, when you're getting into the root cause analysis, it starts to, I mean, this is what we think, right? You can't kind of go back to the data. We're getting into that realm of, it's more qualitative, right? We're starting to think about, well, why is this the way it is? And we're starting to make, judgments about that. And it definitely feels more subjective for sure. So, and I think we'll all get to experience that a little bit. If we haven't done this process before, we'll experience that a little bit next time when we get together. So,
So one of the statements I always put out there is come up with reasons within our control, so that
yes,
we can,
absolutely. Yes, if
yeah.
you get to the end of the 5 why and it's because the parents didn't do their job, you didn't do the 5 why right. You're absolutely right, Fat May. It's like for both of those activities, whether it's the fishbone or the 5 whys, you really have to try to think of the things. What are the things that we can control? That's the 100% blanket statement you need to make before you start working on those. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes. So let's kind of wrap up with some questions. So Ashley, were you kind of keeping an eye on that?
Yeah, and there was really only 2 questions.
Okay.
One of them having to do with the district versus school, and you answered that. And then Jennifer Hammond asked her earlier on the question that I just posted back there.
Yep.
And I know she's off now, so
Okay,
maybe
I'll
send her
make
a
sure
quick
that I
email
follow up
and
with
answer
her.
it for the group.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I follow up with her. But yes, it's going to be ready on January 4th. I just talked to the developers yesterday, and it's going to be out and ready on January 4th. So if you've kind of completed some of those kind of prerequisite pieces, so you have to have the data hub agreement signed, and by signed I mean it's an electronic signature in the data hub, the MICIP agreement signed, and if your district is federated, then you could actually log in and you'll be able to see your live MICIP starting on January 4th. Now, I think after all this work that we've done, we know that we wouldn't be able to pull a team together on January 4th and start cranking it out. So, but it's good to know that it's available then, and you can get in and you can make sure that it's, that all your things are signed. You can get in and take a look at it. There's another thing that's going to be released on January 4th, and that is the practice profiles. So this is a really detailed walkthrough from MDE that will kind of really get into detail and talk about a lot of the things that we've been talking about. And what kind of conversations would you like to have with your team? What are some protocols that you can have with the team? And all those different pieces that really kind of digs into, it's going to give a lot more detail about how to do all the sections. And they are also going to have specific example plans that kind of work through and get through. If we started with a district level problem, what does it look like if we're in middle school? Or if we started with a district level program, what does it look like when we are in elementary school? So they're going to have sample plans. It's going to be a pretty comprehensive piece. So that's going to be coming out on the 4th when MICIP comes out. And so I had a private message, and someone said, "Did you say, is your district federated?" And so federation basically just means that you can log into the system. And so I have a bunch of resources about that in our dashboard. And then there's 2 webinars today that are also linked in the dashboard that explain exactly how to do that. So, but that's a back-end technical thing that your tech person has to do. Basically just makes it so you can log in using, in our case, your Google credentials.
Thanks, Dave. And I don't mind if you out me. I just didn't recognize that term.
Yes. So all of our veterans here are familiar with the federated term. So sorry, I just kind of breezed over that one. All right. So I think that will be it for today. I really appreciate everybody's conversation. I'm more than happy to hang out for a few minutes if anybody had any other specific questions or wanted to talk through any of the parts of the process or anything like that. So at this time, though, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and anybody, like I said, is welcome to hang out for questions.